Okay, so I had some personal experience in this. Back a few years ago, in my last job, I was the director of something called the TRIO program. And the TRIO program is a federal grant funded program that is designed to help college students do well in college. And so we offer tutoring and workshops and a whole bunch of other services. And so anyways, one of my responsibilities as the director was to compile this report each year. It's called the Annual Performance Review. And we had to report on roughly 350 students, and each student ended up having 32 data fields that needed to be filled out and checked. And so that translates into about 11,000 data fields that had to be, manually checked and made sure that the information was correct. And really long, really tedious, very unpleasant. And actually, when I became the director, was right around the time that Joseph Ferrari's work came out on metacognition. And so I had read that work, and when I found out about this report, I thought to myself, okay, this will take me about, a month to do probably. And having read Joseph Ferrari's work, I thought to myself, well, that's probably inaccurate. So I'm going to double that time. So instead of giving myself a month to do it, I'm going to give myself 2 months. And that was a good thing that I did that, because it actually did. It took over a month and a half to do this report, almost 2 months. I finished the report probably with about a week to spare. So I was actually really happy that I had ran into his work, because I think it helped me get that report done on time. So the problem is, though, that this was such an unpleasant task that after the second year of doing this, I was in my third year, and the third time this came around, it was such an unpleasant task that each day I would go into work and I would plan on doing this work, and I would end up putting it off, and I'd find other things to do, and more important things that I had to focus on. So this went on for about 3-4 days, and I started thinking, okay, this is bad. I need to do this report. If we don't do this report, it could really negatively affect our grant, and we could lose our funding. And so this is really important. I have to start doing this. And even knowing that, it almost felt like there was a physical force that was stopping me from working on this report. So this actually ended up going on for about 2 weeks. Every day I'd go in, I'd plan on doing it, and every day something else came up and I would end up putting off this report. And finally, after the second week, I was like, all right, this is enough. I really have to do this. So I started doing it. And it took about 2 or 3 days, but finally after the third day, I think those pain centers were deactivated, and I was able to get into the report and get it done on time and finish it. But later, when I read this research on the brain, I realized that that physical force that I was feeling that seemed like it was holding me back from doing that report, that was my brain, the pain centers in my brain that were activated and that were saying, run away, don't do this, get rid of the pain. And so I think that experience really showed me how powerful our brain's physiology is, and how it can almost feel like a physical force, and it was almost like an external force was holding me back and stopping me from doing it. Once I started the report, it took a while, but once I started it, those pain centers were deactivated and I got into it, and I was able to get it done. So I think that shows just how powerful our brain physiology and our biology are when it comes to procrastination. How a lot of times our own biology can get in the way of us getting things done. So this is actually backed up by Timothy Pitchell. Timothy Pitchell is a professor of psychology at Carleton University. Like I said, he wrote a great book on solving the procrastination puzzle. And in his the classes that he was teaching, he had students that were part of an experiment he did. And so he gave each one of these students a pager. And he also had every Friday night there was a paper due. So this was the unpleasant task. So every day or two, they would page the students and they would ask them, what do you think about the paper? How are you feeling about it? How do you perceive it? And what they found is at the beginning of the week, on Mondays when they paged the students, they all perceived that paper as a very unpleasant, very difficult, and also it added a lot of stress to their lives. So it was something that was causing pain. Um, but on Thursday night, sometimes late Thursday night, and sometimes probably even Friday morning, when they paged them and the students were actually doing the paper, they perceived the paper to be much less stressful, much less unpleasant and difficult. And some students actually reported enjoying the process of writing the paper. So that process that he was documenting in the experiment is the process. I think it shows the process of our brain and how we perceive an unpleasant task as painful and difficult before we do it, but while we're thinking about it. But when we actually get into it and start doing it, those pain centers get deactivated and we can actually enjoy the experience. So again, this highlights the importance of just getting started. And so there are a couple tips and a couple of kind of tricks that I've picked up along the way that can help you do this. So one of the tips is you can actually start working on a project by doing things like, so let's say you have a paper to do and you really aren't looking forward to this paper. So instead of just jumping in and doing the paper, make a title page. Or you could also make the bibliography, the works cited page, do that first. And that actually at least starts the process where you start working on it, and that allows those pain centers to get deactivated in our brains and changes how we perceive doing this task. Another tip that I've found that I use a lot, and it's almost like I trick myself with this tip. What I'll do is, let's say I have a rough draft written and I have to finish working on an article or a paper. So I'll tell myself, okay, I'm not actually going to do any writing, but I'll proofread what I've written so far and just look for errors, spelling errors, typos, those kinds of things, and I'll just proofread. And what happens a lot of times is that I'll start proofreading, and I'll start reading the paper, and it actually gets me into whatever it is that I'm writing. And instead of looking at it as an unpleasant task, I actually get excited about it and start working on it. So those are some tips that we can use that can help us overcome these this kind of biology that gets in the way of us doing unpleasant tasks.